Good afternoon again. It's good to see our faces. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma. Thank you for the amazing session both of you gave us. It was really amazing. And we are glad to be here. And we're also glad to have you here. I'll be expecting our questions on the Slido link for those of us who have questions to ask. But let's quickly go, into some questions. And I'll start with you, sir. We've heard Mrs. Abimbola Okutiyang speak. We've heard you speak. There is the physical and there is the spiritual as Christians to everything that we are doing. Now let's take it a little physical. Let's be practical. Looking at the economy today, looking at what we have, especially with all of those facts and figures you gave us, is there, in quotes, is there hope for everyone who is doing a small business today? Is there hope for growth, especially financially?
Thank you. There are principles that have made nations great. So regardless of wherever you are, God is not, especially when we bring in the spiritual part, God is not, when you were not saved, He didn't kill you. So forget about saying this principle will work for some people and it won't work. There are principles that have made nations great. And for every business, whether small, whether big, there are principles that you must follow. The first principle she spoke about was principle of consistency. So you must know, you must define a space for yourself and you must be consistent. You must be disciplined. So when you grow a small business, what the investor or your financier wants to see in your business is your consistency. Your financier wants to see your character. Your financier wants to see what you like to do. Sometimes I hear people say things like, oh, look at what people are doing. I say to them that the only reason why you're complaining is because you do not have the opportunity to do it. That's why you find somebody go to take this drink. Oh, I'm taking NSC. I'm taking 15. I'm taking 18. You are taking it, you were complaining because you couldn't afford it. But the moment you had that money, you could afford it. So what happens when you talk about financial for small businesses is when people pick up your statement of account, she said something like, always allow every money you make to go into your account. Once it goes into your account, we can tell what your appetite looks like. So money gets into your account. If you're somebody that likes to deal with gold, like to buy perfumes, like to go for parties, I can see it from your statement of account because you will make purchases and I will see it. So that tells us if you're actually consistent with what you're doing or whether you know what you want to do. So for us in this economy, yes, the economy could look challenging because of the fundamentals. But again, the economy is already stabilizing. For the small businesses, all you need to do is continue to create a niche for yourself, continue to develop yourself, continue to do what you know how to do better. Once you do that, then the sky will be the limit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Okutiyang, thank you once again, ma. You're in the events management space generally. For someone who is trying to, I was hearing someone speak while you were speaking. For someone who is trying to get into that space, especially now, you already said it that, you used the word an end-time business. How easy is it to get into that space? What are the practical steps that a regular person who is new in that space needs to take to, do well in that space?
Well, I believe there's room for internship. So anyone can hook up with a renowned event planner and go there for internship. So while they're working, they're learning on the job, or they could go for training. The people who actually train and,
Right. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now, sir, more practical questions. Someone was asking, what are mutual funds? And I would like to take this along with it. Which investments would you recommend Can we go back? Yes. Which investments would you recommend the students to invest in long term of maybe 5 years, and how can one go about it?
5 years. Okay, so
wants to know: do we do long term? Do we do short term?
Okay, so I'll start with the student who is looking at long term investment, and you're looking at maybe a 5-year investment. So practically, there are different segments you can go into. Now, there are some industries that you could go pick up their shares. For example, I spoke about the banking stock that you have right now. The banks are making huge profit. I know of a bank who is projecting to make 1 trillion in profit at the end of this financial year. So imagine a bank making the top 5 banks in Nigeria, the minimum they will make at the end of the year, going from the financials that we have seen by the half year of the year, they will make minimum of 500 billion. So if you have shares in those companies, it means that you will smile to the bank at the end of the financial year because they will pay dividends. When they pay dividends, you have your bonuses, but dividends, you will smile to the bank. Now, for a student who is looking at 5 years investments, you can go into stocks. Safe. Financial stocks, you can go for banks, go for manufacturing, go for oil and gas. A lot of them are putting out their shares right now. You can go in there, buy it. When you buy, you might think, oh, what is it I'm buying? You have 100,000, you can buy stock. You have 50,000, you can buy stock. Buy it there, leave it, forget about it. And then by the time you come back in 5 years' time, you would know that you've done something very good. Now, for mutual funds, it's they are run by different companies. You have insurance companies doing it. You have it's also called investment vehicles that people use. So they bring it together is for an investment purpose. So, for example, somebody is going into maybe infrastructural development to look at it and say, okay, we want to build roads now. And then they want to raise capital. And then they get people to bring in those funds. So once they bring it in, investments from insurance, people pay a lot of insurance. There's huge funds in the insurance segment. And they're really not doing a lot about it. Those funds, people use it for different investments. You have funds in pension. They bring it together, use it for different infrastructural development. So you could go into mutual funds and it helps. You get high returns on it when you go into it. It's used for different purposes.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So one question that came to me while you were speaking earlier was when you mentioned the shares by the financial institutions. I, for one, when Fidelity started, I think they were the first opener this year. I, for one, decided, I think this is a good thing to buy into. However, we started to see a lot of videos in recent times. Most recent by Pastor Matthew Ashimolowo, who complained about, he said they rallied people to buy a lot of shares, and by the time some people said they bought shares of, say, about 1 million, and at the end of the day, the value of the 1 million naira shares became, say, 10,000. That's not what they said, but that's the idea I got. And, I saw my parents, buy these shares. In fact, I had to go check a dividends list, and I saw my mom's name. She had a lot of unclaimed dividends and all of that. And to her, she said the money doesn't mean anything to her again, so she's not bothered about it. So, I felt like, are you sure you didn't make a mistake buying these shares? So, I don't know, what are the growth, what's the word now? What are the growth opportunities for all of us who have gone to invest in a slice of orange and, all of those other things?
Okay, so thank you for that. I think I saw Pastor's post. However, if I take us back memory lane, what happened in those days? Yes, a lot of us bought shares. Now, what the banks did then was to say, and that's why I say when you go in, even this Fidelity Banks share and all the banks, there's what they call facts behind the figures. So a lot of us don't look at those facts behind the figures. You must look at facts behind the figures. You must look at the projection, what they're saying would, what the money will look like in another 1, 2, 3, 4 years. you must look at what they say they want to put the money into. When the banks are raising shares, they're not just raising shares just for working capital. Some are raising for working capital, for expansion, for technology, and a whole lot of things. And then you look at what the fundamentals of the financials of those financial institutions are looking like. Like I told you, there's some of them whose projections are going that they'll make $1 trillion. So what happened in those days was that, like I said, when you're going into business, there are the positives and the negatives of every business. People went to the banks, took money from the banks and bought the shares of the banks. The regulators are already trying to say that will not happen again. So when they bought the shares, everybody, when you have products and you're buying, the price begins to go up. So everybody was buying, price was going up, people were driving the price up. The price that was going up was not the real value of the shares. And at every point in time, it will find this level. So at the time, the shares were going to find their level and the shares began to drop, especially when some of the banks had problems and the regulators moved. It caused a panic. So everybody has 1 million worth of shares. You have 2 million. You want to sell. I want to sell. What happens? Price goes down. So when price goes down, don't forget that you're taking money from the bank to say, I'm taking this money under terms and conditions to buy these shares. I will pay from either I'm selling my shares or other businesses. So when your shares crashes, investors told the banks that use my shares to nil off my investment or my loan. The bank said, okay, they want to use it, but don't forget that when you bought, your shares was probably 100 naira. Now it is 50. After they've used those shares to liquidate, they will still come back for the difference. Don't forget, the money does not belong to the banks. It belongs to other investors. The surplus end of the market brought the money to the banks. The banks now gave that money to the deficit end of the market. So if I decide to write it off my books, it means that I'm writing off profits that I will have to also tell people the reason why I'm writing off those profits. So banks will always come after you and say, but again, I think somebody spoke about, I think it was my brother that spoke about you, the servant that went to the master's debtors and said, okay, pay 80 naira instead of 100 naira. So banks still come together and say, okay, how do we let it be a win-win? How do we write off? But for the shares that you have bought, what I can say to you is that for what is happening in the banking industry as of today, fact behind the figures for virtually all the banks that are out there, I have checked, it is not going to happen because the banks are no longer financing from their own balance sheets. So you buy, and when you buy, you reap. But what happens is that when you buy shares of any organization, what you are saying to that organization is, when the stakes are high, I'm there with you. When the stakes are low, I'm there with you. So if prices goes up, you make money. If prices comes down, you make money. So when small businesses come and they are shouting that banks have increased their interest rates, they are going to give profit to you who has gone to buy shares. The moment they drop it, it will also impact what you are also expecting. So what happened in those days will not happen again because the banks are no longer going to give you money from their balance sheets to. And if they do, they will not take that stock because it is wrong. You will not take that stock as source of security. You provide another security such that if we have to now recover, we can go after the other security.
Wow. Thank you very much, sir. I hope your mind is settled now. Okay, Ma, you spoke about consistency. And we don't seem to focus on the difficulty in consistency, especially when you're not getting results. So, when I'm not getting results, how do I stay consistent? 1. 2, how do I bridge the gap between staying consistent in something that I'm not seeing results in and staying consistent with something that is not working?
That's an interesting one. Let me back up a bit into my life. I lived in Lagos and came into Ibadan by marriage. And coming into Ibadan, it was a totally different terrain. And I found it very difficult to do business in Ibadan. I still was going to Lagos a lot, and eventually I said, okay, let me just stay. Maybe if I calm down, I would see what's in Ibadan. I stayed, I didn't see anything. I tried, nothing was working. And then one day on my trips to Lagos, my mom said, why don't you go into UI and pick up a form and go in for your master's, PhD, maybe become a lecturer, since events are not working. At that time, to be honest, I was tired of staying home. So I went into UI, I picked up the form, I started doing my MPhil, and I continued. Now, I was still doing little business here and there, but it wasn't. But it suddenly dawned on me at the point where I was supposed to pick up my letter as a lecturer. I think I backed off a bit and I was like, is this really what I want to do? If you're going to be a lecturer, you can't do business anymore because I like to do things well. I won't want people saying, oh, if you're looking for Ms. Okutiyang, go and meet her in her office, shop or whatever. She doesn't come to school. I didn't want that impression. So when I stepped back, I had to go back to God to say, okay, I heard clearly, now I'm confused. I'm already doing MPhil, converting to PhD. They've given me letter. And the person I was supposed to take over from was already excited because we kind of had we had similar backgrounds, botany. This was archaeology, University of Ibadan. And it was like, at the moment I wasn't sure, and God help me. I had an unrest in me. And at that time, things around me were scattering, but I was oblivious to it. I didn't take that letter. I went back into my business, and that was when I started running Ibadan Bridal Fair, because I realized that you have to make things happen if things are not happening. And then we started running the fair. By the time I started doing the fair, we got, a bit attention to us, and business picked up. So if you're sure, that's why I said you need to know why you're in a particular business. If you're sure this is where you're supposed to be, maybe you need to step back, innovate, and it will work. Right? But if you're in it and you stepped back and it's still not working, there's nothing wrong in veering off to something else. Right? Hoping that maybe while you're in the other thing, this could bloom and then you come back. But if you're trying something and it's not working, then cut it off if you're sure that it's not working. But in my own case, that's why I say your why is important. You need to know why, because challenges will come to test you.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you very much, Ma. Okay, I'll come back to this. Let's take this question quickly. What are the right steps to take to invest in Treasury bill? How long is the investment before returns? How many years?
Okay, so thank you. Treasury bills are government instruments, and they are low risk. While I was speaking, I said that the return on Treasury bills as of today for 1 year investment, it's about 22%. Why is that happening? Because of the inflation that we have in the economy, because government is trying to bring in investors. So that has impacted very well. So what you're doing when you invest in Treasury bills is they're government securities, and it's very low risk because it is backed up by government guarantee. Now, what are the steps that you need to invest in Treasury bills? Simple. You have your money, walk into your bank and tell them you want to invest in Treasury bills. They'll debit your account and then put it in treasury bills, give you the certificate, and you get your interest up front. So when you're talking about how many years, so for example, if you do 1 year treasury bills, right now government is doing 1 year, we have 365 days, you have 180, 190, 200, between 1 and 365 days, you have that investment. So if you decide to go for 1 year, that I don't need this money for 1 year, put it into treasury bills, government will take it off and give you your interest up front. So it's not that you're waiting till end of that 365 days to get your money. You're getting your money up front, which is different from fixed deposits. When you come to fixed deposits in the banks, most of the time we do upfront, but the upfront will now be lower. So, but if you do fixed deposit, naturally you get your interest at the end of the tenure. But for treasury bills, you get your interest up front. So if your interest is supposed to be out of 1 million, it's supposed to be 100,000. If you do back end, for treasury bills, you can actually do back end if you want back end. If you say you want back end, that means you get principal and interest at the end of the tenure of that investment. But most of the time we do front end. So if you take your interest up front, you will get 100,000 and then you get your principal of 1 million at the end of the tenure. So it's seamless.
Thank you, sir. Someone has a question. In the event industry where sales are probably not that consistent, is it advisable to have other businesses outside, the events with the mindset of we all need to have multiple sources of income?
The event industry actually has multiple streams of income. So I would encourage stay in the industry and look into other options. There are people who do rentals. They do rentals of just tablecloths. They make their money. So you might want to get some more money to invest into that. So if you're not getting jobs as maybe a decorator, you can have a rental arm. Anybody who is doing deco will come and rent from you. You could go into training people. I know people who all they do is training, and they fix it in a way that every month they train 10 people. And those 10 people are paying 50K each. That is 500 every month. And they always get people to train. So you can imagine if they increase it to 20, it becomes $1 million a month. Meanwhile, you're not paying anything. There's no raw material for training. It's your intellectual capacity. So it's important that you look, deeply at the different streams of income in the event industry and plug in instead of going to look for something else. Yeah.
Thank you, Ma. Now, this question is to both of you, and we'll round it off here. What is the role of Forex, of the foreign currency, in our different businesses? How do we plug in into, the most popular statement most people will make now is, saving dollars, saving pounds, saving foreign currency. So how do we plug into, foreign currency, having the mindset that want to buy the Naira to grow the Naira? How do we, marry all of that into our different businesses? Ma, let's start with you, please.
Well, two ways. When we're talking about technology, you could put your business online and that works well. You get more visibility and people abroad get to see you. Now, for the event industry, that's your CV. People just go straight to Instagram. They've never seen you before. They're happy with what they see. They're happy to pay you. So if you have a client abroad, you tell them to pay you in Forex instead of paying you in Naira. So that means you have to open a DOM account, or you could have one of these online accounts where you can pay, and that works well for you. On the other hand, we use Forex to buy materials over there. We want to buy flowers, increase your stock. You want to increase, you're changing money to do that. So most of the time for me, I realize that the people who bring it in wholesale bulk, it's even cheaper because somehow they get the real deals with the manufacturers. So it's safer for you too. So both ways, I think Forex is quite important, and its impacts on our business, either positively or negatively.
Thank you, Master. Please give us the financial jargons to this thing.
Okay, so it's unfortunate that yes, our economy is import dependent, but it's unfortunate that a lot of us have now made dollar the main currency, which is impacting everybody. I see people get 2,000, 1 million, 2 million. You're coming to the bank or you're going to Sabo to say you want to change it, put it into dollars. And you know the implication of that? It's the forces of demand and supply. Because you are import dependent, it means that demand will outstretch supply. So what is happening now is that a lot of people want to do arbitrage. So you want to take money, buy dollars, and go and resell. And that's what happened at before this administration came in. When you come to the banks, you can get your FX at a certain amount. You go to Sabo, you can get a certain amount. So overnight, you can make somebody a billionaire. So I can buy at 400, sell at 800, and then you see that difference. Everybody is no longer doing real business. What we're doing is we're changing dollars and we're taking FX all around. And that has huge impact on our economy. And when it has huge impact on the economy, it impacts even the small business more. So what people do now is, people still try to put money into dollars and say, I'm saving. And that's why the government is trying to see how they can find a balance. So right now, you can see that there's a little bit of stability in the Forex exchange market. So you take it there, take it out, you will still not make that margin you want to make. But what we say to people is that for us to develop a country of our own, we must look at what we call backward integration. And that's why for businesses, what the government is trying to do is to say, the business you're doing that is import dependent, how can you substitute it and use what you have in Nigeria? And that's why you have some companies, big corporate organizations, who are now doing backward integration. Oh, I'm importing milk. Okay, so you're now getting a plot of land, and then you are trying to now plant and then see that those things that you are importing, you are beginning to produce it here. And once you begin to produce here, then it saves that demand for dollars. And that's why when you see them going into the oil and gas industry again, and you start talking about, a Dangote needs crude, he needs this, sell to him in Naira. Because we're all chasing dollars. And it's so interesting that even when you go to the market, somebody who is selling tomato tells you that the dollars. Yes, but the truth about it is that the person might not understand what he or she is saying, how it affects. It's because transport, you've imported PMS. PMS has gone up. Transport fare has gone up. So she puts it on it and tells you it is dollars. But for us to solve this problem as a country, we must look inward. We must begin to tell ourselves in our little space, what can I produce that will help bring value to the country, and then it will reduce the impact of dollars. I know people will say to me that once you have your Naira, go and put it into dollars. You can put it there, but if you have a going business, a going concern, it will be difficult for you to take your money, put it in dollars, and take it out of dollars again, put it into Naira. But really, it's something that we must stop.
Wow, thank you very much, sir. Please put your hands together for our amazing panelists. That's so cool. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Ma. We've come to the end of this panel session.